Okay, so this is my aviation 2150 class, air transportation management. It's a class I'm currently teaching this semester. As you can see, the spring 2019 module. I've taught some version of this class for the last 10 years now. I would say the last 7 years have been either in a hybrid or online format as well as local. And in doing so, I've really kind of brought the local version to the online class. It's entirely paperless. It's all OER. So the course textbook that you can see here is actually a book chapter that I wrote with the author of the textbook that had been previously used for this class. And so um, rather than going through an entire textbook, I tell the students all they have to do is go through one chapter of a textbook, but it's much more condensed and very deep in the knowledge. So for the first question about changes I make to the class, one of the assignments that I've gone through multiple times is, for examples, through the Pathway 3 class was this introduction, why are you here assignment. So in the first week I go through and have them really do what I call more philosophical stuff on student success and what success means to them. What are they hoping to get out of this class? And the purpose I do this is to challenge how they view their own success so that they don't just default to metrics that students typically do, such as grades, but really what they're hoping to accomplish and how that ties into what they want to do in their career. And so even later on in this, we go into career goals, and this management by objective is a means for them to take what they're learning in class um, and build this up and tying it to their objectives in life so that it flows from the class onto their resume and helping them build their resume towards where they want to get later on in life. What I wanted to do is take this "Who are you?" assignment, and really this was something that I'd done in the past in class, where they'd take presentations and I'd break them down into groups so that they're doing it, and then we mix the groups up individually. But it took a whole class period to go through this. So what I've started doing is just having them attached as a PDF. It's good, but it's still not really building a sense of community that I want. And so I'd like to take this into um, more of a video. It's something I tried to do probably 5 or 6 years ago when I first created this assignment. At the time, though, the technology that we didn't have integrated webcams and no laptops. Nowadays, with students, most don't even have laptops; they're using tablets. But almost every device that they have is going to have some kind of integrated webcam, so that they can record what they're doing and do a screen capture similar to this with their presentations. What I want to do is change the assignment up so that we're doing screen capture presentations for those presentations. It's going to allow for a greater sense of online community, particularly when the students are choosing group members, which is a really kind of critical part of this class. Because you can see in the second part, they're already starting team applications, put their teams together, and then they're going to work on team roles, rules, and communication. So it sets the stage for who they want to be working with through the rest of the semester, because these groups help them create support for them in learning together, and they're going to be in those groups all the way through the end of the semester. This is also a good example of a social presence, but I think a better example is, and I'm just going to use a past class that I've taught. So this was my section of airline management I taught in the fall, and my social presence is really done through the announcements. You can see here, I do a number of announcements throughout the course of the semester on events we have going on campus, events throughout the state. So this is the Utah Airport Operators Association conference that was happening in the state. Also different events that I have going on. If I'm traveling, I let students know where I'm going to be in case they are going to be in that area around the country. I also let them know of different opportunities that they can do for certifications, different research opportunities. So I've got all of these different announcements that I create for outside of class, as well as giving group feedback on the assignments that they're doing. So if I see consistent patterns of behavior throughout the assignment, I'll give feedback to the entire class along with the stuff I'm giving individually on the assignments. So that's really the social presence I create. In the past, I've used things like teleconferences, and I still do that for the capstone class. But really, that's evolved from teleconferences into group Google Hangouts. So the groups will create a Hangout. They usually add me to the Hangout just so I can kind of see the conversation that's going on there. What Hangout does is it allows for a video conference, so they can all get in and do a synchronous video discussion online. When they have issues, then they can just dial me right in and I can jump in. I can take a look at their screen for the simulation that they're working on to really see what the issues are and be able to walk them through that. I've gotten really good feedback and SRIs on that. Students have really liked that. For me, it works much better than Facebook. We've tried to create a social presence using Facebook and other social media tools. I find it really doesn't work well because the technology changes too much. There's a lot of resistance, particularly nowadays, to privacy issues with social media. And so I don't want to force anybody to adopt a certain technology, especially if they're not using it consistently. And I found that just these synchronous tools have been a lot better than any social media platforms. In terms of a topic or module that I can include additional resources for, in this aviation management class, I've got a great example of a video that I did a few years back in class. And this is really where I've been taking my classes. You see here, there's this watch how to complete the revenue management assignment. When students click on this, it links to an MP4 video that was recorded in my class. And it's about an 8-minute long video. Actually, it's about an 11-minute long video that goes through how to complete the assignment they're working on for this week. It was just a lecture capture right out of the classroom. This is the only one I've done, but I've had a lot of student feedback from my SRIs that I want to see more of this. And so I do plan on doing much more lecture capture in the classroom. I've requested hardware through the PBA process. The classroom is getting set up to capture audio and video from the classroom as well as what's being projected through the overhead. And plan on creating a lot of videos, at least vignettes, not just dumping the hour and 15-minute or 50-minute class online, because a lot of that is interactive and it's discussion. They don't need all of that. It's little 5-10 minute long explanations that I provide in class that I can just snip it out and provide in little video vignettes for students, just like this, where I'm explaining how to do the assignment, really to kind of promote more student success. I also plan on doing a lot of professional videos or videos with industry professionals in the area and nationally as I travel. So I host a conference in Washington, D.C. every year with the FAA and NTSB and other industry associations. And through that, I've got a lot of access to people that our students don't have a chance to meet on a national scene, and just want to be able to create little 5-10 minute long discussions, Q&A type things with them, as well as with industry professionals in the area to just supplement what I'm providing, because I feel like they're parent a lot of times, where I can preach as much as I want. But when there's somebody else that's got national prominence saying the exact same thing I am, it holds a lot more weight. And so I want the students to be able to benefit from that as well. In terms of aligning course outcomes from the lessons into the modules, I think just going back to that 2150 class of mine now, I have them do a simulation for this class. And so when I switched from OER and I got rid of the textbook, I did replace it with some other written content. It's not just the link here, but I have reading assignments through each module. Because you can't assign due dates, I typically just pair them into these groups of like subjects. All the assignments for each module are due at the same time, so they can see this module is the one I have to work on this week. In order to do this, I need to read the early history and regulations section of that book chapter. And if you look at these links here, it's just that piece that is broken out individually. So this is a small reading, probably like 2 pages long, out of that 25-page book chapter for them to read. So, but supplementing that reading, I do primarily a simulation. And so you can see here's the introduction to simulation. What they do is they go through 2 rounds of a regulation simulation. So it simulates the 1920s and 30s environment for air transportation when the first airlines were starting up. And this is it's a formative assessment. They're not graded other than just participation. And the expectation is really setting them up to fail. Because a lot of times we learn best through failure. And I tell them the airlines during this time failed miserably. And you guys should expect to do the same as well. As long as you're learning from those failures, when you get to the part where it's a summative assessment, where we're assessing what you've learned and your graded and your performance, then it's going to matter a lot more. But between now and then, they actually have 10 different rounds of the simulation and 2 different environments that I run for them to learn how to use that simulation. In this introduction page, they have the link to the environment so they know how to get on there. There's introductory tutorials, and these are all video tutorials that were created by the third party that offers the simulation, as well as a 120-page user guide that they can always go to as well. And then have some advanced tutorials, things that we'll get into later on the simulation, but they don't need to know at this point. They can always come back to learn how to use that. And so these video tutorials are really helpful in their success. Another thing that I've done that I haven't even tested out in this class yet, but just started implementing was teams. And so I've done teamwork in previous classes in the capstone class in particular, but I wanted to roll that back earlier into the curriculum. This is a 2000 level class, so most of them are sophomores, maybe juniors in this class, and I want them to get more experience working as teams prior to getting to the capstone. And so I took a lot of the assignments like the team application, the team roles, rules, and communication assignments from that capstone class and just repurpose them for this class. Instead of doing the simulation on their own throughout the class, I had them doing it as an individual for the first 2 rounds. So there's US regulation round where they're really just the purpose is them to learn how to use the simulation, and they're not great at performance at all. I had them doing that as an individual, so they all learn how to do that. But once these teams get formed up, then they go into a deregulation simulation. And this is starting really in the 1978 on period to present in a deregulated environment where I then remove all the restrictions. I call it taking out the training wheels and let them really go into running their own airlines. Now, these airlines, they're running as groups. So while they learned in the first simulation environment how to do this as an individual, now they have to come together as teams and make team decisions on how this works. The reason why I love simulation so much is it's extremely engaging. The students have learned a lot more. And really with this learning outcome, I want them to apply the fundamental principles of air transportation economics to current industry issues. And they have no choice but to do that. What they do is they learn that through things like the supply and demand, reading assignments, revenue expenses, and then have them do an Excel assignment where they analyze the state of the industry. And they've got to take this current data. This is actually an Excel file I used in order to create some of the presentations or some of the images and figures that are in their reading assignments. And they're intentionally dated. I don't go through and update them to current date because I want the students to actually do that themselves. So what they're doing is they're creating content basically that's found in their reading assignments, and then they're analyzing that and including it into a paper that they then have to present, incorporating those Excel charts that they've created using the current data. And the reason why this is a great assignment is because it really requires academic integrity. You can't cheat on this assignment because it's using information that is up to date for the latest year. So it's refreshing every other semester. Also, when you're turning it in as a CSV file in Excel, I can go in and I can look to see who the author was and what machine it was created on. And so I can see if they're passing it around or sharing it with others. And I really do encourage them to collaborate together. I don't want them to get too frustrated because a lot of them have never even used Excel. And so I tell them, I don't care if you guys work on this together and you get help in your groups, but I do want to see you each submit an individual assignment. I don't want you just copy and pasting from somebody else's. You really have to go in and do it step by step because otherwise it's not going to turn out correctly. Excel charts can be very finicky, and if they don't do it in the right order, if they just try and copy and paste from somebody else's, it's not going to come out looking correct anyway. So it's got a lot of academic integrity. It requires them to apply at a high level, and it's collaborative environment. It's also having them use real world data to solve real world problems. These are the kind of things that they would do in industry if they're presenting a presentation on the current state of the industry. And no matter what they go on in their career, they're always going to have to know what's going on in the industry. So it's relevant to all, whether they're management majors or seeking a career as a professional pilot. I also have students, as I mentioned, using the video tutorials for the simulation. And again, this simulation really forces them to apply what they're learning here in an environment that gives them instantaneous feedback. So I call it gamification of the learning. They enjoy the simulation. I have students that ask me to run the simulation over breaks. Even if the semester's over, they want to run it. And I have students that continually come back after they're out of the class to join in the simulation and act as artificial intelligence airlines because the simulation does offer AI, but it's not very smart. And so what I found that's better is having students that are from previous classes that have done really well come in and present themselves with competing airlines to those students that are in the simulation. And they're natural mentors. So I've had students that have come back as interns to want to mentor other students. They set up their own kind of tutoring hours, even help students along in the simulation. And it's really great to have students that successfully completed the class come back and contribute to the current class. So we've had some great success with the simulation. In 2 of my classes, I do two different types of simulation, and I'm trying to incorporate even more of that in there where I can. Other things I've done for student success practices, I've got a class here that I'm just developing now. This is the airport management class. So you can see the skeleton is here. It's pretty weak though at this point. I do all of these assignments are cafeteria based grading. So students can choose from all of these activities that I set up for them to go through different tours locally. They can go attend the triannual emergency drill when that's happening. There's other events that they can go do. So these TRB webinars are the Transportation Research Board. It's part of the National Academy of Sciences. They can go and attend or either attend live webinars or the pre-recorded ones from several years back, even on a topic they're interested in. I've got projects where they can download AutoCAD and get experience doing planning projects. They can get certifications through FEMA. These are free courses they can take, and this is great because it really builds their resumes. So these are things they can put on as qualifications for their resumes in advancing their career. I have current event articles that they can go then and do. Each one of these is set for a minimum number of points, and within the assignment, I tell them how many they can do for a maximum of how many points. So you'll see in here, and for all of my assignments, I have an introduction explaining why it is. Here's the instructions on how to complete it. Here's the grading, and in this case, the grading is just if you submit it, you'll get 5 points for up to a total of 25 possible points. So they know how many points they need to earn in the assignment category, and once they complete that, they're looking at their total grade that way. I also do an embedded laboratory with South Valley Regional Airport, and so students can go and set up a meeting with the current contact at that airport and basically do the job for a day and get points for doing that activity as well. So there's a lot of variety in the activities that I offer in this class. I think it's a great example of letting students choose what they're interested in rather than forcing them what they have to learn. A lot of it is getting outside of the classroom. So this is a hybrid class, but I also offer it online. Students that aren't in the local area can set up tours of their own and then just provide evidence that they attended that tour to receive the same points. So there are submissions that they can do in here. You usually require them to get a picture with the person they're doing the tour with and send me that. So it's very easy to be able to track and make sure that they're doing quality work. One thing I'm also improving in this class prepares them for an industry certification exam. So it's, again, OER, using different modules that were produced through the American Association of Airport Executives. And what they do at the end of this class, if it's optional, but if they want to earn the certified member accreditation through AAAE, they take a 180 question test, but it costs roughly $350 for the membership and signing up for the exam. So what I'm doing for students that don't want to pursue that is they're going to be a series of 4 tests, one after each module, and they're all going to be summative assessments on that part. So rather than doing one big 3-hour-long 180 question test, they're each going to be doing 45 question exams through each module to break it up into chunks so that they're learning along the way. And it's reinforcing it for those that do want to take that very large summative 3-hour-long test at the end of this class. In this one, I'm also creating video vignettes as well for each one of these learning outcomes. So each one of these modules is broken down by a learning outcome. Sometimes we've got 2 different ones in here. The content can be very dry and boring. I teach this one over spring break, so I do a very intensive lecture over 3.5 days, and they take the test on the 5th day. And what I plan on doing is creating video content from that intensive class to be able to provide in here, and then actually getting out on the airfield and capturing actual footage of what I'm trying to teach here. So it's not just a boring lecture, but I've got B-roll from the airfield and the terminal construction project that's going in Salt Lake right now, incorporating all of that into the videos that I'm creating, but keeping the short 5 or 10 minute videos on each subject so that there's not, an hour-long boring lecture that they're going through. In terms of applying the course design rubric, I chose this 2150 class. It's the one I primarily teach. I went through the rubric, and I feel like I did a pretty good job already. A lot of what we do in aviation is online content, and the standards are set by the department. So when looking at the course information, particularly the syllabus, we've got a standardized syllabus we're required to use in all of our courses. That way it's consistent across all the aviation classes. It checks all of the boxes for required policy, campus policies. We have instructor information, and that links to our UVU profiles. That's on uvu.edu, so we don't have to continually keep updating it in the syllabus. You can also see I always have this introduction here in myself and how I want to be contacted, so students don't even have to look at the syllabus to get that information. Instructions for accessing third-party technology tools. I think I demonstrated that in that introduction page to the simulation where students can go and have the link to the third-party tool as well as the resources that are provided by that vendor right at their disposal there. And I'm continuously encouraging student success and support through the announcements. And I kind of show that with the feedback. I also provide a lot of specific feedback and assignments. And for students that are doing a good job, I make sure to point that out to them. I don't just give them the grade and then move on, but I tell them why they got the full credit and what I liked out of their assignments. When it comes to course alignment, again, a lot of that stuff is required by policy to be included in the syllabus. For students, a lot of times it's hard for them to line that up. And I think what I try and do is I try and align the modules to the individual learning outcomes. Now, in this case, I've got a series of modules, and they're not all tied into learning outcomes. Sometimes it's the first 2 or 3 modules that are tied into one learning outcome. In terms of learning the course learning content and activity, again, the OER that I'm using in the simulation is also mixed in with a lot of traditional assignments. So you'll see here that they still have papers that they have to do. I love doing reflections, and I try and incorporate a lot of reflections at the end of each module so that they're tying back the information that they've learned into what they've done. I also have a summative assessment at the end, and this is 10% of the grade as a self-evaluation. So I set up at the beginning of the class with the syllabus, this is what I expect from the course. Here's everything you need to know about the course. And I have them go through and evaluate their own performance in the class throughout the semester and justify what grade that they believe they deserve. So if we look at this assignment, I'm really using this as I go through and grade, and it counts for a significant part of their grade. So I want them to tell me if they think they deserve a B or an A, why they think they deserve that. And it carries a lot of weight in terms of what they get. So students that feel like they didn't perform well throughout the semester but still learned a lot can justify that here at this point. And students really like that opportunity. I have students doing it anyway, so I wanted to provide an incentive for all of them to, from the very beginning, own their learning and be able to go in and reflect on that throughout the course and then complete the course with an assessment of how they feel that they did. That's going to carry some weight that can actually impact their final grade. For me, it gives me a way to kind of fudge that for those students that really put effort in that assignment and put effort throughout the class that maybe didn't perform very well in the simulation through no fault of their own. In terms of course technology and tools, like I said, I've got those formative simulations built in. So I use the simulation tool both formatively in the first 2 simulations, but you'll notice at the end of the class, there's no final exam. Especially with online classes, it's really hard to keep academic integrity when answers can be posted. I've done timed exams, but it always seems to end with tears because students will have their computers reset or whatever it is, and it creates a lot of issues. So what I prefer to do is I don't like multiple choice exams. I like kind of non-standard assessments. And so for the final round, they do the simulation again. Now, this is the 3rd time they've done an environment simulation. They've done 10 rounds already. And what we do is kind of a lightning round over a series of a week to 10 days. And you'll notice that we set it up with round 0, which that's the baseline for them. It's an ungraded round, but it lets them have some data to be able to make decisions on. And then this venture capital fair, what they're doing is they're creating business models or business plans based on the first round of results. So they can look back at what's happened. They can write a business plan and where they're at now and what they're going to do for the next 4 rounds. And what I really want them to do is not just think about what they're doing in round 1, but what they're doing for the subsequent 4 rounds and how they're going to react, what they expect to happen with each one of those, and how they're going to react if things don't go as expected. So it's really a living document that they're going to work on. Even though they submit it early on, they're going to keep updating this, and they're going to refer back to it to make decisions as they go forward. Then they're graded on the performance in this class, and the way that the grading works out for this one is it's all relative to student performance. So whoever is in first place in the class gets 100%, and it's curved that way. All the other students then are graded relative to that person that's in first place. And so students have an incentive really to work together. They want to see everybody do well, and everybody can get an A if they all do well and help each other out. It really discourages students who are trying to pull away. There's no benefit from not helping your other classmates. And in fact, the way that students that do really well keep doing well is they form alliances, which is what actually works in the airline industry. We have airline alliances. And so the successful airlines go and teach the unsuccessful airlines how to do well, and they can profit from that. So the students are able to invest in their fellow airlines, and they can get dividends and stock returns from those airlines succeeding. So it's a really cool recreation of what's happening in the industry through the simulation, and it forces students to work together. Even though they're doing individual airlines at this point, they're working together in new teams to whatever works for their strategy and works for their benefit, but it helps benefit everybody. I also have analytical skills that are developed using the technology. I talked about using Excel in here. I also use PowerPoint for their presentations. I mentioned how I want to add in video presentation to this class, and so I think that's going to really help develop that sense of community. Also using new tools. In terms of keeping the navigation clean, you can see in my navigation bar on the left-hand side, I really only have them look at a couple of things here. Collaborations, I don't even use in all classes. I like to have people in here because they can create groups that way, especially when they're doing group activity. The announcements are critical. I use that quite a bit. The syllabus is really there for the first semester or the first part of the semester, and they're going to go and look at that for due dates because the syllabus will break down by week, even though it is broken down that way in the homepage. Assignments, they can go and look and see all the various assignments in here, and they can also see how it's broken down in terms of the percentage of grade. So they're going to get 40% of the total grade from their assignments, 30% from the simulation, 20% from exams, and 10% from that self-evaluation. Getting to the design of course layout, I think I covered a lot of this already. The assignments are grouped in the modules, like I said. I think it's pretty easy to navigate here, especially with the due dates being consistent. And I do move this around as the class goes around if we start falling behind or need to adjust things. It's harder to do in an online environment, so I try and stick to the due dates as much as possible. But if students if something comes up, we have holidays, students are requesting more time on assignments, I've got no problem pushing assignments back. In terms of having information for students to be able to do assignments. Like I said, in all of my assignments, I have, and we can look at the roles, rules, and communications assignment here. In this one, you can see there's always an introduction. There's instructions on how to do the assignment and the grading. And here I even have a resources. This would be a template that I want them to start with. So they start with that template and fill it out. That way everybody's turning in basically a standardized assignment, and I can go through and grade it really easy. But this is how I facilitate their group conversations and the tools that they're using as well. But you can see clear and concise instructions here. As far as I know, everything is free of grammatical and spelling errors. The content activities, I already went through how the simulation really provides what I think is engaging higher level thinking where they're applying the skills they're learning from the analytical assignments. Also requires communication skills both in a team as well as presenting what they're learning. Requires a lot of critical thinking, and this is why I really like the simulation as well, is because it provides automatic instantaneous feedback very specific to their actions, and it's not something that takes my time to do it because they have to, it's trial and error. It's all research, and I teach a lot of research skills to them that, we don't know what your competitor is going to do in the simulation. I don't know what's going to happen if you price your airfares at this price. Just try it, and then we'll expect an outcome from that. We'll go back after the next round and see how it worked, and if that didn't work, we'll try something different. So it's all this trial and error, and they're getting this constant feedback from the simulation that doesn't require my involvement at all. I can help them, I can guide them, give them instruction, but they're really teaching themselves through trial and error, and that's what I really love about that. And we also have a lot of real-world applications. I showed the business plan models in there. They do the real-world assignment of the current environment, so they're tying all of what they're learning in the simulation back to the real world, and that's why I have the 3 different environments set up to regulate or to recreate the early regulatory environment when airlines are starting, and then the deregulation period when we removed all those rules and what happened. And they get to experience what it was like to be an airline during that time period and the chaos that ensued from allowing airlines to set their own prices and create their own routes and the challenges that these airlines went through. Because I can teach history, but it's really boring. But having them recreate and live that experience really reinforces that. And then they all apply that what they've learned in a summative assessment in the simulation for their final exam. Like I said, the course is entirely OER. The simulation that we do some simulation fees that's paid through for some course fees, but it comes out to about $25 a student. So much cheaper than what a textbook would be even. In terms of the copyright and licensing, citation, that kind of stuff. I do provide citations for the reference material that I've created. I don't have copyright and licensing information on it for the software. That's something I can probably provide. In terms of accessibility, this was pretty easy because our department goes and reviews our online courses for accessibility. So most of the stuff that you see in here is compliant, and it's reviewed by staff in the department to make sure that it is. Interaction, there's quite a bit of interaction in here through the team assignments. I was just showing this team roles, rules, and communications. I specifically asked them to discuss the technology tools they're going to use and how they're going to communicate, as well as what their expectations are for each other. All of my writing assignments use UniCheck. We just migrated from Turnitin. And I had built-in rubrics for grading those assignments even, so they get that generalized feedback from the rubric. It's not something that's supported by UniCheck, but I'm migrating that back in to the Turnitin speed grader tool. And assessment and feedback, so that just talking more about that, they get a lot of that feedback already through multiple rounds of the simulation. I provide feedback through announcements, assignment-specific feedback in the speed grader and through the use of rubrics. And then they're reviewing their own performance and assessment through the reflections after the individual modules, and again at the end of the course in that final assignment down towards the simulation. So I really like to have them recreate the environment and then reflect on their experience and how that relates to the real world, tying it back in there. In terms of the course being organized well with the dates, like I said, I think I've got the dates laid out here pretty well where it's easier for students to follow. And I feel like it's a well-organized course. And the last thing being the gradebook. When you look at the gradebook, it is what it is. There's not a lot you can do to control what you're getting on these or how the gradebook displays. It is usually sorted kind of chronologically. And when you go to the end, it's going to have the breakdown by category. And I prefer doing it this way rather than just a jumble of points so that students can see how they're performing and grades in the simulation and so on. So that's really the course design rubric. In terms of how I'm using this, I mentioned the course, the Pathway 3 design I'm doing right now for the airport management class. I've got a couple other classes currently in development. And I also plan on doing some other pathway workshops to further my teaching skills. So that's my review of the class. Hopefully that was helpful. Went a little long, but that's probably better than not doing enough. So feel free to provide some feedback through the comments section in the assignment. I'd love to hear what feedback you got for this. Thank you.